We're here today with Lachlan Beggs.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here, Ollie.
Sam Bray.
Hello, you're right.
And Will Matthews.
Hi there.
And myself, Ollie Oxley, discussing how issues surrounding special educational needs have affected participation in an educational setting and how these potential problems could be overcome. So, Lachlan, what do you think about this?
Yes, well, with the rise in awareness of SEN students within sport due to factors such as the Paralympics, there is a greater emphasis on inclusion with SEN students within the physical educational setting. Teachers now, in comparison to a decade ago, have a greater obligation for pupils who have come from disadvantaged backgrounds, such as people who have special educational needs. This also intertwines with that teachers are encouraged to follow the equal opportunities movement, which conveys that equal opportunity should be given regardless of any type of disability that a person has.
Have you read anything recently that might be able to back up these allegations / what you're saying?
I came across a piece of work from Batchelor, who wrote in 2006, who discussed that equal opportunities are important within PE because it creates possibilities for students with SEN to develop a sense of being amongst themselves.
Oh, I see.
So, going on to what teachers can do, what does the national curriculum do to overcome the barriers of participation?
Well, the national curriculum states that lessons should be planned to ensure that there are no barriers in the way to stop every pupil from participating and achieving. In addition, the Special Educational Needs Code of Practice, which is also included in the curriculum information, also states how some students will need specialised equipment whilst learning, and that the SEN Code of Conduct will show how this can be effectively put in place. This portrays that this Code of Conduct should be familiar with all physical education teachers to make sure they're prepared for any SEN students and how they can ensure effective participation no matter the circumstance.
Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah.
So going away from the guidelines and requirements of SEN students within physical education, there's also many issues surrounding SEN students in PE. The first issue comes from the teachers themselves as they look to factors such as space and level of support that SEN students have. I was reading something the other day by Cook B from 2005, who used a sample of 43 secondary school teachers, and within this sample we explored the perceptions and feelings of including SEN students amongst regular physical education. What the study suggested links back to the original point where the teachers' perceptions evolve around the activity area and the training opportunities that are available to SEN students at schools.
So, Will, what negative issues does this portray about teachers, you think?
Well, I feel like a negative issue this portrays is that teachers aren't prepared to delve deeper and be creative with activities to ensure that SEN students are participating at a high level, which allows them to be included as the same as other participants. In addition, another impact that this introduces is on the SEN students psychologically. If the teachers don't include the SEN students within the activity, then these specific students are likely to lose motivation and to reduce their effort when an available opportunity arises for them to be involved in.
Have you read any other articles or theories of poor teaching which can impact the special educational needs students in a practical setting?
Going back to what I said earlier on, I found a reference from Smith. He wrote in 2004, he produced a piece of literature stating that teachers within schools only use traditional team games in their lessons, which I think links to our PE module in the TGFU model, because it conveys that these teachers aren't using the student voice to help adapt their actual games that they're using in lessons. Therefore, the issue this shows is that these PE lessons are being shown to exclude SEN pupils in comparison to allowing them to have a full inclusion in the lesson themselves.
Yeah, sure. That makes sense. Coming to the end of the issues surrounding SEN and education, Will, can you think of any of the, before we press on to the strategies to overcome the suggested issues?
Yeah, another issue within physical education for special educational needs students is that the teachers have said that the teacher training they have experienced hasn't prepared them for working with SEN students.
Sure.
So I was reading up on the other day of Coates, 2009. He presented a qualitative study which aimed to examine the views of recently qualified teachers in secondary schools. The study aimed to gather information on these teachers' opinions as to whether their teacher training provided them with confidence to teach SEN students.
Sure.
The issue rose that 84% of new teachers stated that their training hadn't prepared them for SEN students in PE. The issue this shows to the SEN group is that the new teachers again won't have the knowledge to allow them to adapt activities for special educational needs children. Instead, the SEN group is likely to be excluded due to the new teachers, which is further damaging them psychologically.
Yeah.
So it's gone
Yeah, I
lucky.
see.
I do think one thing I've sort of picked up on is that from what we've sort of got here is that I think SEN students in primary schools are probably more included within lessons.
Yeah,
So you sort of see that in primary schools you normally have people actually who help the SEN students throughout the day, which I think means they're more included.
Yeah, well, definitely, because when I did my placement recently, the school that I went to had a special section called the Ivan Centre, which especially for special educational needs students.
Oh, okay.
So they had one-to-one lessons all day, which I think
Probably better compared to being at secondary schools. I think at secondary school they're sort of just left to their own devices, which is shown by the teachers saying that they're in their actual training, they don't really get enough training to actually help them.
Yeah,
exactly.
But I feel like they're not excluded because they put them into classes with people who are the same ability. So there's more than one special educational needs students. They're not going to feel excluded.
Sam, come on to you now, mate. How can you summarise the actual strategies to overcome the issues before we go into each individual example in more detail?
Well, in 1995, the DDA, the Disability Discrimination Act, stated that in terms of inclusion and especially SEN students, reasonable adjustments to their policies and practices to prevent discrimination against these pupils should be made in all schools. This could be through accessibility planning within curriculum planning, or by promoting disability equality and having a disability equality scheme which shows how the school will address such issues. However, even though this is what the DDA is stating, the problem is now that teachers are feeling as if they haven't been sufficiently trained to deal with children possessing SEN and therefore cannot fulfil what the DDA is stating.
Yeah, so Ollie, going back onto what Lachlan stated, what do you think could be put into place within teacher training settings to ensure they are prepared to face SEN students in the classroom?
Well, I think the first possible solution to this problem is to develop and increase the opportunities within relevant courses at universities. If practicing teachers believe they aren't sufficiently prepared enough to work with SEN pupils, then the system needs to ensure that A, newly qualified teachers are better prepared in the future, and B, practicing teachers are provided with CPD in order to fill the expertise gap. Providing current teachers and future teachers who are currently at university level with sessions and professionals who have a background with working with SEN students, which has the potential to improve confidence and outcomes. Teachers will have a bank of ideas about how to get the best out of SEN students and how to make them feel more included in PE. For example, from personal experience, I've been taught lessons involving wheelchair basketball, wheelchair volleyball and goalball from participating in these lessons. I've, to an extent, realised how it would be for a child with autism, Down syndrome and even sight and hearing disabilities. It's allowed me to devise techniques about how to include all pupils and how to make it as enjoyable as possible for them. Through these experiences, my awareness of the importance of differentiation in a lesson has drastically increased.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's fair enough, mate. Leaving more like an open question to you now. Have you thought of any other principles you can think of, like Sam or Will or Ollie? Have you thought of the STEP principle, for example?
Well, yeah, I have. Algazine and Anderson in 2007 described differentiation as addressing the full continuum of children's needs, involvement from teachers working flexibly and creatively through a range of differentiation strategies to design environments that are conducive to learning for all. So going back to what you said about the STEP principle, it's a principle to differentiate the class is both suitable and effective, especially when coming to these SEN students, whether it's differentiating them through outcome, through task, resource or assessment. It's making the environment more suitable and adaptable for their needs. So for example, if you've got someone who's in a wheelchair, maybe put them onto concrete instead of grass is more suitable for them.
Yeah, sure. So linking back to teachers using too many traditional teaching games, how can teachers adapt this so there's more variety for special educational needs students?
An important part of a good PE curriculum. However, provided a curriculum that is dominated by invasion games may unintentionally provide complexities for SEN pupils. A PE curriculum that is broad and balanced may dilute issues of inclusion for SEN pupils. A wide variety of sports that include individual sports and non-traditional activities could be easier for teachers to make reasonable adjustments. For example, inclusion and differentiation may be easier easier in dance, gymnastics, new age curling than in sports like rugby. This is an issue that each school needs to grapple with at curriculum level and balance with other pressures it may be under.
Well, a strategy to overcome the problem of SEN students feeling excluded rather than being included in physical activity is a problem that is being addressed in society and schools at the moment. So Smith 2011 quoted that, "Indeed, when compared to their non-disabled peers, some disabled pupils and those with SEN typically tended to be provided with a limited and somewhat narrow range of sport in which to participate. Teachers also suggested that some pupils rarely participated, if at all, in ECPE, and in some cases they were often taught separately from other pupils in clubs and teams that were developed specifically for them in an effort to cater more adequately for their needs and abilities."
Sure.
I also think, going back to what Sam said about how differentiation is easier in dance and gymnastics and harder in more common sports, like rugby, I think definitely in secondary schools and probably more at college as well, the curriculum is more based around sports such as football and rugby, and there's less chances for kids with SEN to take part in lessons which are easier for them, like dance and things like that.
Yeah, 100%.
As well,
like what Sam said.
As well as that, in primary school, most PE lessons are built around like fundamental movements and stuff like that, and I feel like children with SEN would find that hard as well.
Yeah,
like just basic throwing and catching and stuff.
Yeah,
sure. So going on to other coping strategies, have you come across any when researching this at all?
Well, various companies now exist to make sure that SEN children are involved in team sports and games in school, whether that be an all SEN environment or involving them with more able students in class. For example, the West Wiltshire Schools Partnership are a company that invites students from Key Stage 2 to 4 in different schools to take part in activities such as wheelchair, basketball, new age curling and more. They have specific equipment and facilities that allow SEN students to have as much access and enjoyment in activities that maybe in a primary school they wouldn't have.
I know what you're getting on. I was on YouTube watching a company called MCP STV, and in 2010 they posted a video called Adapting Physical Education Class, and they were showing how they adapt lessons to fit the needs of students with special needs. And for example, the whole class, SEN and more able students, are in the gym attempting archery, and they were discussing how instead of excluding a little girl who is blind and autistic, they adapt the situation through the use of technology now. So for this instance, they put a sound target behind the target which they were trying to hit, so that they knew where the sound was coming from.
Yeah, so that links into whether you want to keep them separate in SEN-based only classes, whether you want to induct them into... So she's still able to participate in a normal class, and they just adapt it slightly for her.
Yeah, it's quite clever.
What categories are there within SEN, and how can teachers adjust to these issues?
Well, of course, every child is different, and every child deserves the same right of access with the next person. It's unwise and inaccurate to simply group pupils as able or SEN. Within each category, there are many subcategories. For example, SEN doesn't simply mean physical disability. Each special need may have its own special solution on how to integrate all pupils. For instance, teaching a pupil with autism will require the teacher to adapt their lesson in a different way that including a child in a wheelchair may slightly be different.
Yeah.
In this case, a reasonable adjustment could be for the teacher to explain the lesson objective and content to the pupil before the lesson, so that the student has a structure that's quite familiar.
Yeah.
The teacher may adapt to certain exercises as well. For example, like I think of by providing extra verbal instruction or use colour coding of cones or markers.
Sure.
Yeah.
Some autistic children may find physical contact upsetting, so a teacher may need to explain the rules and objectives to the pupil beforehand, so before they start the lesson or whatever, so that they understand that tackling is a legal part of the game in something such as football, rugby, or more of a contact game. A teacher may even adjust the objective of an activity by providing bespoke objectives for an autistic child that differs to the objective of the main class. For example, the other children may simply be trying to win a game, but the autistic child may be provided with objectives more within their own control. For example, to make 3 passes and 1 tackle in football or rugby.
Yeah, sure. Have we got any final points that anybody would like to make?
Well, one point I could think of is that the national curriculum aims to include all SEN students. However, this is sometimes vague in my opinion, and teachers should be provided with more specific instructions.
Sure.
I see. Well, one main thing I've picked up on is that teachers in primary schools differ to secondary teachers, as in primary school students are more included through more varied activities.
Sure. My final point is that I think in teaching courses, especially in PGCE, it should be compulsory to have an extra SEN unit.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's great. That's what I see. That's good, guys. Thank you very much.
Cheers, thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, bye.